Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. This podcast is all about our journey into the woods of ourselves, getting to know who we are, where we are, and where we're going in life, so that we can create the life that we want to live. It's about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. It's also about mindset. Our beliefs are such an important part of this journey, and there are so many ways for us to change our mindset so that we can more easily live a life of expansive joy. This podcast is also about going literally into the woods and spending time in nature, and how that can help us on our own personal journey of self-knowledge. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now let's get into this week's episode. Hello, adventurers, and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 414. This is your host, Holly Wharton, and I'm back with another exciting guest. Today, I am talking with Rebecca Walsh from Hike Like a Woman. I don't remember where I first discovered her, but I've been following her on Instagram for ages, and I really love what she does. In this episode, we talk about solo hiking for women and why women should give it a try, and how to manage anxiety and fears about getting things wrong or making mistakes along the way. But I want to clarify that this episode isn't just for women, and it's not just for hikers. It's for everyone who may have fears about getting outdoors and doing something new. And I think that's really important because everyone can be afraid of stuff in the outdoors. There's scary stuff out there sometimes, and it helps to be prepared and know what you're getting yourself into. So who is Rebecca Walsh? Rebecca is a former Army officer. She's the founder of Hike Like a Woman and owner of Laramie's Basecamp, an outdoor retail store, guiding, and outfitting company in Laramie, Wyoming. She's also the author of the ebooks How to Hike When You're Pregnant and How to Hike with Kids. Rebecca has appeared on the PBS television show Travels With Darley. Her work with Hike Like a Woman has been mentioned in Sports Illustrated Swimsuit, New York Times, Real Simple Magazine, The Dyrt, the National Park Journal in Colorado, and Visit Wyoming. Rebecca has been featured on various podcasts and radio shows, to include Minnesota Public Radio and as a speaker at the Outdoor Blogger Summit. 2014, Rebecca started a local hiking group, Little Laramie Hikers, with the goal to connect children with the outdoors. The group hikes weekly, rain or shine, and serves over 600 families in the community. Rebecca is also a professional cross-country ski instructor. Rebecca's true passion, however, is helping break down barriers to entry in the outdoors and helping women explore with confidence. She does this through events, both in person and online, workshops, and guided trips. She actually has some upcoming courses, so start following her on the Instagram at Hike Like a Woman and check her out. She's got some things coming out. So what are you going to learn in this week's episode? We talk about some of the biggest fears that women have about solo hiking. We discuss how people can feel safe when they venture into the outdoors, what people need to know before they go outdoors, and how people can manage anxiety and fears once they get out there. Finally, Rebecca shares some of her recommended safety tips and tools. And I've really loved having this conversation with someone else who lives in a very different outdoors environment to me, and someone who just dedicates her life to this, to helping women and people, kids, get into the outdoors and learn how to be safe in the outdoors. I think this was a really useful and interesting conversation for me, and I hope you find it interesting and useful as well. And I hope it encourages you to get outdoors, solo or accompanied. I hope you enjoy this episode. Here you go. Hello, Rebecca.
Hi, Holly.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I'm super excited about our topic today because this is something that I talk about kind of on and off on my own, but I've never actually had a conversation with someone else about this, and you're kind of an expert in it. So let's talk about solo hiking for women. How did you get into hiking? How long have you been doing this?
Oh, I grew up in a really outdoorsy family. So my parents kind of put me on the trail as soon as I was a baby and a kid carrier. And so I've just kind of grown up being outdoors and hiking and doing all of the fun outdoor activities.
You're really lucky. I did not have I had an outdoorsy family until I was born, and then they just stopped doing it. I don't know.
No. That's so common, though. I think a lot of parents have that first child, and they're like, oh, this is hard. This adds a whole new dynamic. We should stop doing this.
Stop the camping trips.
Yeah.
So how did you get into solo hiking? Because that's a whole new ballgame.
Yeah. When you're like a young single woman and you don't have any friends to go hiking with and you're unattached, you don't have a partner or you're not in a relationship, but you really love to be outside, you just kind of branch out and go on your own, right? You can't always wait for someone to join you. Sometimes you just got to go for it. So yeah, I've done some solo hikes. Yeah. But now that I'm like, I have a husband and kids, now I don't get to do solo adventures as much as I'd like to anymore.
Well, I remember when I was in high school, and I think that's a really good point that you make about how you don't always have people to accompany you on the things that you want to do. I used to drag my friends hiking with me when I was in high school, but they weren't always available. And I remember there were a few times, because I lived right down the street from this state park in California, and I would go on the trails on my own. And I never felt safe. Like, it was like I did it because I wanted to do it and no one could come with me. But I always felt like I was doing something wrong or like I shouldn't be doing it. And I never felt safe doing it. And it wasn't really until many, many, many years later that I got into the habit of hiking on my own and, maybe didn't always feel 100% safe, but like got used to it.
I feel like solo hiking, it's kind of like you got to build up to it a little bit. Yeah. Like we don't run before we walk and we don't walk before we crawl.
Yeah.
And so I always tell women, like, don't start off doing these big epic solo hikes. Just start with little stuff until you're more confident. And then you got to build up to it, right? It's like training for a big race. You got to build up to the big solo adventure.
Absolutely. So did you have any fears about solo hiking when you first started?
I don't think so.
Good for you.
Like I said, I just grew up in the mountains and being outdoors a lot. And so I learned from an early age all of these skills. And one of the skills that I learned was how to be brave and how to be confident and how to be bold. And so I just kind of took all those skills with me as I started solo hiking and hiking alone. And I feel like a lot of women aren't so fortunate because we tend to tell women, it's scary out there. There's wild animals and there's creeps and there's all sorts of scary things out on the trails. And we don't teach our girls to be bold and to be brave and to be confident. And that's kind of one of my personal missions, is just to help women feel confident in the outdoors.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I joined Brownies because I wanted to go hiking and camping, and we didn't do any of that stuff. We did like weird crafty stuff. So I didn't even get what I wanted. So I did it for a year and then I quit because I was like, that's not what I thought it was going to be.
I'm also a quitter of Brownies.
Oh, are you?
I didn't like the outfit.
Oh,
like the little brown apron smock thing. That wasn't my style.
Yeah, I like the green Girl Scout one. But really what I wanted to do was I wanted to get outdoors and I wanted to do this stuff. And it seemed there was no place to do it. So I kind of just was left with this wanting of, how do I do this stuff that I want to do? And there really wasn't a way for me to do it. So it wasn't until I grew up that I started doing these things. And like you said, it was little by little. It was, short hikes, longer hikes, multi-day hikes. But I would have loved to have had that experience from childhood so that I could learn how to be safe in the outdoors.
I feel really lucky that I grew up where I did in the family that I had. I feel a responsibility because I recognize that privilege there. And so I feel a responsibility to help girls and women be confident in the backcountry.
Yeah.
I think any woman who's been on a solo adventure, we should all finish those hikes and those trips feeling inspired and empowered and feeling like we want to share that experience with others. And we want others to experience that same feeling too. And so I hope that podcasts like yours and platforms like mine, I hope that we can encourage women to learn the skills that they need to know so they can go outside and have a great time, right?
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons that I write the books that I do. Like when I walk a trail here, and I live in England, so my outdoors is very different to your outdoors. But that's one of the reasons I write my books about walking, because I want women to know that I do all these walks alone and I've survived. I'm fine.
Yeah. And I feel like there's so many stereotypes out there too about all these bad things that can happen to you. But really, statistically speaking, I mean, it's more dangerous to drive through a Walmart parking lot
Yeah,
than it is to
probably.
go on a solo hike
Yeah,
in many situations.
probably.
So kind of shattering those myths about how
Yeah.
dangerous things really are.
Yeah, yeah. And normalizing it. Because I remember when I first did my first long distance walk here, I mean, it was in Southeast England. I was on my own for a week. Like, it was really safe.
Mm-hmm.
But I had so many people saying to me, like, even here in England, where people know what it's like, they're like, oh, you did it alone? Oh, wow. I'd be too scared to do that. And that just made me want to talk about it more because I realized how many women fear it. So since you teach this stuff, you're kind of having these conversations probably more often than I am. What are some of the biggest fears that women have about solo hiking?
I think that women have three big fears. And the first fear is that they worry that something bad is going to happen to them and they're not going to be able to take care of themselves or find safety. And I think women are also scared of wild animals. And that can be, from my neck of the woods, it could be a mama moose. Moose are terrifying, or a mountain lion or a bear or an alligator or a snake. And then I think women are also scared of people.
Yeah.
That makes sense, right? To be a little bit scared. Not all humans have kind hearts, unfortunately. And, we read about all the women getting lost and attacked. And it's unfortunate that we don't talk about all the times that women go out and have really amazing experiences and it's all good.
Yeah.
Right?
And they do come back all in one piece.
Yeah.
So how can women feel safe when they venture into the outdoors? Because like you've said, not all women have grown up in an outdoorsy family. They might be new to this. And of course, the outdoors means something different in every part of the country and every part of the world. But how can women feel safe when they start venturing outdoors?
I think it comes down to two things. I think it's all about education and experience. I think education, so taking classes and workshops or hiring a guide to take you on a backpacking trip, or there's so many free clinics and workshops. I live in a university town and there's so many opportunities to learn more about the local trails and the local area and wildlife. And then experience, just the more you hike, the more you venture into the backcountry, the more confident that we become. And then that education combined with that confidence that's the mindset that someone needs for a solo hike.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I think hiring a guide or going on a group trip or that kind of thing is so valuable because you've got the leader that you can pick their brain and you can ask questions and you can learn by their example. And there's so much you can learn from doing just, a day hike with other people.
Yeah, I guide backpacking trips and I lead a lot of free hiking trips and just that community alone. And there's so many opportunities to find communities of like-minded hikers, They exist everywhere. I have a local hiking group here in southeastern Wyoming and we have almost 600 families in our hiking group and we hike every week, every Friday morning. And that group alone has helped create a whole generation of children in our community who get really mad when they see trash on the side of the trail and kids that are very strong and very healthy and kids that have knowledge about the local wildlife and the local plants and local trails. And those groups, they really empower people. I feel like once you feel like you're part of a group that goes out regularly, then you might be hiking with 2 or 3 other people, but that builds the community of hikers locally and inspires other people to go hiking. And so, I'm a huge advocate for hiking groups and they change lives.
Yeah, I think that's so great that you're getting kids out in the outdoors and passing on that tradition. I think that's just massive.
Yeah, and it's fun.
So many kids are like, we've got so much technology today that we didn't have, at least when I was a kid. And I feel like that's kind of the norm for kids to be on tech and not be in the outdoors. So I think everything that we can do to kind of encourage them to have that balance rather than just all focus on one thing is really important.
Yeah, and we all need that balance too, not just the kids.
Exactly.
I have to get out and break away from work and computers and my phone all the time too. Yesterday I was out with my kids and we were on a little hike. They love science and they watched a YouTube video where someone was putting plaster in animal tracks to create a cast. So we got some plaster and we got some water bottles and we hiked out to a beaver pond where we're looking for beaver tracks, and we found some beaver tracks and some moose tracks, and we were trying to make these molds of the tracks, and it was a complete disaster. But on that hike, like I made a really deliberate decision that I was going to take one picture for Instagram and then I was going to put my phone away for the rest of the time because I really wanted to be present and in the moment and experience that with my children. And so we all need to go outside and put our phones away and close our computers and turn off our tablets and just be in the moment. Our world would be so happy if people would just take a few minutes to go for a walk and not have their screens.
Oh, I know. And I love that you took them out to do those molds of the tracks. I mean, even if it was a disaster, like it's a whole different way of engaging with the outdoors and paying attention. Like your level of focus when you're looking for tracks is so much more intense than when you're just out for a hike. And so it's a very different way of experiencing the trails.
Yeah. Are you familiar with like the I think it's called 18 Summers movement, and it talks about how we have, it's so cool. It talks about how we really have 18 summers with our kids.
Yeah.
18 summers before they move away or go to college or join the military or whatever. This spring, I looked at my oldest, who's 9, and I thought, oh my gosh, I only have 9 more summers with my oldest child. I got to make it matter.
Yeah.
And so I'm really trying to break away from work and go on more adventures and create those memories. And yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I know this woman who does, she has a new channel called 940 Life. It's a similar concept that you have 940 weekends with your kids until they kind of, go on to college.
Yeah.
So you may only have 9 summers left with your oldest, but you've got a ton more weekends.
You're right. You're right. Probably more weekends than I want.
Probably. So what do women need to know before they go outdoors? Like, what are some of the basic skills or information?
I think a lot of times people in the outdoor industry get really wrapped up in all of you need to pack this and you need to know this and you need to know that and blah, 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 blah. So I would say women need to know that you can go and you should go hiking. And it's really, really, really simple. All you have to do is find a trail, find a friend, and throw a snack and a water bottle and a little first aid kit in your backpack and just go.
Yeah.
Just make it so simple that you don't have any excuses to not go. I think we need to stop overcomplicating hiking and walking and being outside, and we just need to go, right?
Yeah. Should you probably maybe be aware of what kind of wildlife is in your area before you go?
Sure, but I think most people already know that unless they've moved to a new area.
True,
I think, it's like the 10 essentials and wildlife. That's where the education piece comes into it. And if you find a friend who's already a hiker, they'll give you some good advice too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So once women are in the outdoors, if they start getting scared, how can they help to kind of manage the anxiety and those fears once they're out there?
The most important thing, I think, is just to stop and take a deep breath, right? We don't breathe enough. We don't breathe deeply enough. And just analyze what's going on and figure out what you need to do.
Yeah.
The moment that we start to panic, and our heart beats fast and we get a little bit nervous and scared, that's when we make poor decisions in the backcountry. And so that's just taking a calm second to just reevaluate and think about what you need to do. In all of my wilderness first responder training, like the first thing we always do before we go and help a patient in the backcountry is to just stop and assess the situation and look at the surroundings. And that's great advice. Just stop, breathe, and you got it, right? Have some confidence. You know what to do. You can do it.
Absolutely. That's fantastic that you are a wilderness first responder. I've done my outdoors first aid, but I would really love to kind of take that to a new level and learn the other skills. So can you explain to people listening, if they might not know, what is a wilderness first responder? What does that involve?
Yeah, it just involves a 14-day course, and it's pretty intense on taking care of and helping treat injuries in the backcountry. So this would be situations where you aren't able to evacuate a patient. I require all of my guides who work for me to have their wilderness first responder training. I think it's really important. It's a next level up from a wilderness first aid, but a step down from a wilderness EMT. So it's kind of a middle type course there. But yeah, it's fantastic. I got my wilderness first responder through NOLS, the National Outdoor Leadership School here in Wyoming, and it's a fantastic organization. And I have had to use my wilderness first responder training in the backcountry. And so I think it's very important that everyone, at least at a minimum, has some sort of first aid knowledge. And you might not even need it for yourself or who you're hiking with, but you just never know what you're going to encounter when you're out on the trails, and being able to help someone when they're having a moment of crisis is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I've never had to use my outdoor first aid with myself or with women that I used to guide on walks, thankfully. But I've done a lot of training in like navigation and that kind of thing. And the guy that I do my training with has said so many times he has had to apply first aid skills to other random people that he just sees out in the hills that get themselves into a situation that's, not ideal. They get injured. And so he's had to help so many other people outside of his group because he has the skills and he needs to help someone.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah. I wish more people had first aid, just even basic first aid skills, because I think sadly not everyone does that.
Yeah. Not everyone has the time or the money or the resources to take even a simple first aid or CPR class. But yeah, it's important for sure.
So are there any other kind of safety tips or tools that you recommend people do or have?
I get asked this question a bunch. And one of the things that I think is really important for women, especially as when it comes to safety, is to have some knowledge of self-defense.
Yes.
And we don't talk about that in the outdoor industry. Everyone's like, oh, carry mace or bear spray or hike with a knife or a gun or whatever. But I think taking a self-defense class designed for women can be really confidence building.
Yep.
And it's also teaches you some great skills to know how to not just like defend yourself against an attack, but also kind of some things to look for and also trusting our gut.
Yes.
We have this great intuition, and most of the time we know when something's feeling weird or when something crazy is about to go down. We can feel it, we can sense it, but we don't always listen to that like inner voice, or we don't always trust our gut that's saying, hey, you might want to turn back. You're hiking into bad weather, or it's not a good time to try to summit that peak, right? Yeah. We don't listen to ourselves, and learning to listen and trust our own intuition, it takes practice and courage sometimes as well.
I agree with everything you just said. I've been doing kickboxing for the last 6 years. I'm a brown black belt. It has completely changed how I feel being alone. It's absolutely given me the confidence to spend more time out by myself in the woods, because I know that whatever happens, like I've got my body, it's functioning, I can use it to defend myself. I belong to this really great Facebook group for women trail runners. And every once in a while, someone will ask the question, what do you do to feel safe on the trails? And it's a very American group. And so the answers are pretty much always gun or pepper spray. And like, I live in a country where thankfully we don't have guns, and we also don't have pepper spray. Pepper spray is illegal here. So it's like, well, I'm really glad I, have my kickboxing skills, because I don't have weapons that I can use. I mean, even the knife laws in this country are really, really strict. Like, you can't carry a fixed blade knife. So I think it's really important to have that self-defense skills, not just for the confidence, but because, you might not always have a weapon or be able to carry a weapon.
Or even want to carry a weapon.
Exactly, yeah.
I like guns, but I don't carry one on the trails. Yeah. I don't feel like it's necessary because I have education and because I have experience and I know what to pack. But yeah, it's interesting too, the cultural differences.
Yeah. Yeah. In some countries, you just don't have certain things available. It really surprised me to see how many women in the States run with a gun. I know there's a safety on guns, but like I would be afraid of like tripping and falling and like the gun goes off and like shoots me in the stomach. Like, I don't know.
I mean, plus they're heavy.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless you're, my guns just sit in the gun safe.
That's a good place.
Yeah.
So my next question was going to be, what common safety tips do you not recommend, like such as carrying a gun? Or is there anything that you hear people talking about that you think, oh yeah, I definitely would not recommend that?
Oh, I heard someone recommend, they said, oh, you can use like pepper spray on a bear instead
Oh,
of like mace on a bear. And that's horrible advice. Like pepper spray designed for human beings is not going to be effective on a charging grizzly bear. The concentration is different and
yeah.
just the way the can shoots the pepper spray. And I wanted to chime in and argue with that, but I just let it be.
That's why they have a special spray called bear spray.
Yeah. Or just this whole culture of feeling like we need to be afraid, I think kind of bothers me sometimes too. And this mentality where you can't do it because you're a woman and you should be scared because you're a woman. And I don't like that, but I don't know how to change that culture. My husband's a dude and he gets scared on the trails too. I mean, it's not just a gender thing either.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good thing to hear because I've never had that conversation with men about being scared on the trails. So I think that's really good to hear.
Yeah, my husband he actually had a black bear just like literally come up and like paw at his backpack when my husband was like taking a picture, and it just like snuck right up. And it was terrifying to just be like inches away from this black bear. And so we hear all these stories about women and our fears and how we should be afraid. But I think it's human to experience fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just how we react. I think there's probably a different reaction with the genders, but
it is. And no one's telling men you shouldn't go out on the trails hiking alone because stuff might happen. It's women that get told that over and over again. So it kind of reinforces the fear.
Yeah. And as the mom of boys, right, I don't want my boys to grow up in this culture where they can't feel emotions like fear because they're a boy, right? I want them to grow up knowing that fear is actually normal and healthy and in many ways protects us from dangerous situations. So there's a time to be afraid and then there's a time to be brave.
Yeah. And I think some fears are healthy. I mean, obviously, if you know absolutely nothing about going into the backcountry and you do it and you're not prepared, then you probably should be afraid because you didn't prepare yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you have any other tips about solo hiking for women that maybe we haven't covered yet?
Oh, man.
I know. I feel like we've covered it all, but I just want to make sure.
I love solo hiking and I think it's great. I think we talked a little bit about how it's important to maybe start off slowly.
Yes.
But it's also great to hike with a friend.
Yeah.
And there's so many women out there who they feel like one of the reasons they don't go hiking is because they don't have anyone to go hiking, because maybe they don't want to go solo hiking because not everybody wants to hike alone. So I think if you have a friend that wants to go hiking and she's not sure about it, take her along, right?
Yeah.
And then learn together. And then you can branch off and do some solo hikes if you decide that the right way or that's what you like to do. But there's so many women out there that want to hike with a hiking partner and just don't have anybody.
Yeah. And also I would reiterate what you said about trusting your gut. Trust your gut about people, trust your gut about weather, trust your gut about like everything you see trust your gut about everything in life, but but especially when you're alone in the outdoors. Like if you see someone that's behaving a bit strangely, like trust your gut about that. And like you said about the weather, like if you're, climbing up into a storm, and it doesn't look right, maybe you should pay attention to that. I think so many times our head will override our fears and we'll be like, no, but it's, it'll be fine because it's always been fine. Like trust your gut.
Yeah. And that's when accidents happen, right? Yeah. When we don't trust our gut, when we think, oh, I can hike into this storm and still make it back down safely. No, that's not good. That's when bad things happen.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you're out in the middle of, nowhere and it's all of a sudden started lightning, that's scary. Maybe you shouldn't be out in the lightning, find a place to take cover.
Yeah, I was actually thinking back to the biggest misadventures that I've had on the trails. And they're always because I really, really want to get someplace really fast.
Yeah.
Because I got to just prove that I did it, right? Or I got to put an Instagram picture out there. I remember my kids, they were little. I had a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old. And our highest peak here is just over 12,000 feet. And the last mile or so of the trail is over just a rocky boulder field with loose rocks and uneven ground. And I've climbed the summit a lot. For some reason, I thought I could just do it with 3-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Oh,
And
wow.
I put my 3-year-old on my back and my 2-year-old on my front. And I really wanted to stand on the summit and be like, I carried my kids to the summit. I wanted I just wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. And I remember we were probably like 300 feet from the summit. And my gut was just like, Rebecca, this is a bad idea. There's loose rocks. If something happens to you up here, there's nothing like what's going to happen to your kids, right?
Yeah.
And so I had to make that safety call to head back down the mountain. And I was kind of bummed because I really wanted to reach the summit with my kids and we were going to do something hard together.
Yeah.
And I don't know what would have happened if I would have reached the peak or not. But I like had that moment where I had to listen.
Yeah.
And it was hard because I wanted to keep going. So I think we've all had those moments where we've had to listen because something wasn't right or something wasn't safe that we were doing. And the more we learn to listen, the better it's going to be.
I agree. And the more you listen, it's like a muscle that grows or like you develop it. So the more you listen to your intuition, the louder it will speak.
Yeah,
absolutely. So you teach this stuff online, in person. Can you tell us a little bit about your work?
Yeah. So at Hike Like a Woman, we do monthly workshops. So we do free monthly online workshops. And I just ask our community, hey, what do you want to learn this month? Last month, we learned about safety tips for women hikers. And the month before that, we taught a map and compass class. And next month, what are we teaching? Backpacking, a little mini workshop on backpacking. So they're just 45-minute sessions. And then we also teach online classes. So we have a Hiking for Absolute Beginners class. We're getting ready to run a second session here, and it's been fantastic. We have 70 women in the course right now, and we're getting ready to publish a Hiking with Babies and Toddlers class, and then a Hiking when you're pregnant class as well, because a lot of women get pregnant and they're like, their doctors tell them, oh, you can't do anything. And they listen, and there's things you can do. I live at 7,000 feet. And when I got pregnant with my second child, my doctor was like, you can't exercise above 6,000 feet. And I was like, the town's at 7,000 feet. I don't understand this. So just teaching women that like you can hike through a healthy pregnancy. So we're kind of expanding the online class offerings. This is something new for us here the last 3 or 4 months. So it's been really fun.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love that you're challenging stereotypes of what you should and shouldn't do at certain phases of your life. I think that's really important. I mean, obviously, always listen to your doctor if you're carrying another human being inside your body, but sometimes the advice doesn't make sense, as you said. If, you shouldn't be hiking above 6,000 feet, but yet you live above 6,000 feet.
Right? Yeah. It's so weird.
And you have 2 living children as a result, like they've survived the pregnancy.
Yeah, barely. No, I'm just joking there. And all that hiking in the womb, I think, made them very outdoorsy. They can go forever now.
Excellent. So you've mentioned Hike Like a Woman, but where can people find you online?
Sure. You can find more about Hike Like a Woman by visiting our website at hikelikeawoman.net. And we're also most active on Instagram. So just Hike Like a Woman on Instagram.
Yay. That's where I found you, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have anything else that you've forgotten to say before or you'd like to say as a final words to women who might still be afraid about hiking alone?
Just try it. You can do it. You've done it, Holly. I've done it. And living proof that you can have a solo hike and just create those amazing memories. And it's unforgettable when you have a solo hike and kind of a transformative experience out there. It'll change your life, and it will change your life for the better. And so thank you. Just thank you for letting me talk about this today, Polly.
I could talk about this all day.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your details with people. And I really hope that people check you out because it's very inspiring work that you do. And I love seeing pictures of people hiking around the world because it just makes me want to travel more once we can do that freely and get outdoors in different parts of the world.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much, Holly.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Bye.
That's all for now. Please drop me a line and let me know what you thought of this week's episode. You can email me at holly@hollywharton.com or find me online and get in touch there. Next week, I have another exciting guest, which I'm super looking forward to sharing with you. I've got some great guests lined up. I know I said that last week, but I've got 3 people confirmed in the calendar that I'm really looking forward to talking to and sharing the conversations with you. So again, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. It would mean the world to me. And remember to visit hollywharton.com/414 for the show notes on this episode. I've also got all the links in there for Rebecca's Instagram and other websites, so check that out. In the meantime, happy trails to you. Have a great time. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollywharton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.